What's up, everybody? Let's talk about recoil management with the rifle. Basically, when I look at recoil management with the rifle, it's no different than when I'm looking at recoil management with the pistol. The same type of principles, in my opinion, apply. The majority of your training should be principle-based. This stuff is no different. Recoil management, in my opinion, should be no different. And I think one of the key principles that I look to when I'm looking at managing recoil, whether it's pistol or the rifle, is the gun needs to behave in a very predictable manner. Meaning, if I put the dot on a spot and I pull the trigger, the dot lifts wherever it lifts. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not terribly concerned with where it lifts. You shouldn't be watching the dot lift anyway. What I'm very interested in is, where does the dot come back down to? Meaning, if I pull the trigger, the dot lifts and the dot comes back down in a different spot, this means that the way that I'm mounting the rifle or gripping the pistol is probably not that good. And I probably could have either a more durable mount or a more durable grip, or I'm putting some sort of input into the gun that I shouldn't be, right? I'm putting too much input into the gun, making it behave in an inconsistent manner. So what I'd like to see is, when I press the trigger, the dot lifts and falls right back down to the exact same spot that it lifted from. This is a very, very predictable recoil pattern, and it's gonna enable you guys to shoot way faster than you normally do and keep that type of accountability in terms of accuracy. And so one of the techniques that I look for while exploring recoil management with the rifle is the mount. So the way that I mount the gun, the techniques that I use to mount the gun are going to be supplemental to that big key principle, right? Keeping the gun predictable. And so the way that I like to mount the gun is the stock essentially like 1 inch to 1.5 inches lower than the top of my shoulder. Okay, when I grab a hold of the pistol grip, I'm not pulling with this hand or anything. I don't want to feel a bunch of tension in my firing hand. Every time I pull hard with this hand, I get like trigger freeze and stuff. So same exact principles would apply to a pistol, right? I don't want a ton of firing hand tension when I shoot a pistol, and I don't want a bunch of firing hand tension when I shoot a rifle. So what I like to do again is, you're gonna put the stock about 1 inch to 1.5 inches lower than the top of your shoulder. You're then gonna take this shoulder and shrug it up like this. To me, this does two things. The first one is, it's gonna bring the rifle up to your face and not your face down to the rifle. Number two is, you're gonna wrap that shoulder around the back of the stock, which in my opinion traps it. And I see a very, very predictable recoil pattern when I do that. If I leave this shoulder back and not wrap it around the rifle, all I see is like the dot go, you know, high right, high right, high right, and then back down. Like the dot moves around a lot when I leave that shoulder back. If I take this shoulder and kind of shrug it forward and up, it kind of traps the gun there, and I basically just see the dot jiggle around the spot that I'm looking at. In my opinion, when the dot moves around a lot on, you know, a rifle or a pistol, people tend to become dot focused because they perceive it to be moving around a ton, and they want to latch on to the dot with their eyes and try to control it and put it on a spot. To me, like, that's not how any of it works. You should be looking to a spot, and the bullet should just be going there. And again, the way that you're going to achieve this is the way that you mount the gun. So take this shoulder, shrug it forward and up, right? Kind of like this. This is going to lift your gun up to your face. Notice I have a nice heads up shooting position when I do that. If you don't shrug this shoulder up and you do this with your face, that's when you see people saying stuff like, oh, I have to like mount the gun really high because I don't want to, you know, do this with my face on the buttstock. It's like, you don't have to do that with your face on the buttstock if you just shrug this shoulder high and basically wrap your shoulder around the back of the stock. You'll have a heads up shooting position almost despite the height of your mount, the height of your mount on your optic. So support hand, it's gonna land somewhere in the middle of this rail. This is a 12.5 inch gun. I'm like 5'10". This is where my hand kind of lands, right? Like right in back of that laser. What I like to do is have a slight bend in my elbow. That slight bend in my elbow allows me to pull the gun into my shoulder and have a little bit more leverage. If this arm was straight like this, I can't pull the gun into my shoulder, and I cannot control what the gun is actually doing. And so what I think a lot of people do with rifle is, you know, they'll come out, say for instance, they'll shoot a bill drill. I think they'll come out the first maybe 2 to 3 rounds. It's the way that they want to mount the gun, and then after the second or third round, the support hand starts letting off, and then the firing hand and shoulder get involved, and the gun starts being very unpredictable. So I think another key principle is the mount needs to be essentially like a vise, right? It needs to be durable. In other words, like if I point it at a spot on the target, I should just be able to bang on the trigger and the gun just returns back down to that spot. And we shouldn't be having to put a ton of input into the gun to make that happen. One thing that I see some of, at least on the internet, is, again, people doing this, mounting the stock really high. When I've explored this, I cannot get the gun to behave in a very predictable manner. The gun just kind of flops all over the place, and yeah, to me it's no good. So I think a great drill that will allow you to focus on the way that you mount the rifle is going to be shooting doubles. Shooting doubles to me is a really good exercise that is going to allow you to see if you're putting too much input into the gun and if you're looking to a really small spot. It's going to show you how predictable the gun behaves with the type of mount that you're using. So this will allow you to see, hey, is my technique supporting the key principles that we're looking to when we're looking at recoil management. So target on the left, I'll shoot kind of with the mount super high up here like this, and then target on the right, I'll shoot with the type of mount that I normally use. We'll go down here, look at the hits, and then we'll talk about what I look for when we shoot doubles. Okay, all right, now we'll mount the gun, try to keep a really durable mount, and then see how that goes. All right, let's go down here, take a peek at the hits. All right, so we'll just do this. Here's with a decent mount. Here's what it looks like when we don't get a proper mount on the gun. So, in my opinion, if you're doing this, trying to explore recoil management, using something like doubles, right? Am I using the correct technique in terms of how I mount the gun? If we're doing this at 10 yards, the group should not be bigger than that, right? So the goal here is not like, hey, all alphas. Because if it's all alphas with rifle, if you're just looking at all alphas with rifle in 10 yards, to me that's like just asking for misses on this whole target at 20, 30, and 40 yards. If it looks like this where we've got, let's see, 3 Charlies here and the rest alphas, this is not success to me, right? This group at 10 yards with a rifle is complete trash, in my opinion. The gun should be behaving a lot more consistently and predictably than something like this. We want like golf ball size group if we're shooting doubles at 10 yards, even 20 yards with a rifle. I think that if you can do that, your rifle is behaving pretty predictably and you have a fairly solid mount. So hopefully that helps. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comment box below. Happy to answer those.